Hello and welcome to another slice of rye toast. This time, 3 strange but true stories of love, loss, and life. Part 1. Nana. It is February 1956. I am 9 years old and in the most anguish I have ever experienced in my young life. I have just learned that Nana, my mother's mother, has died in a horrible home accident, asphyxiated in a kitchen gas leak. This is not the first time I have suffered a loss. My father died of cancer in 1949 when he was 27 and I was just 2. But I don't remember him or his passing. So this is very different. I love reading and have a good vocabulary, but I don't yet know a word powerful enough to describe what I'm feeling. I will later discover that that word is grief. Since my father's death, my world has revolved around Mum and Nana in our house in Cricklewood, northwest London. Also, a golden spaniel puppy named Floppy, because of the way its ears fall into its food and drink bowls, and a series of budgerigars, all named Freddy for some reason. Actually, it's probably more accurate to say that their world revolves around me. Mum and Nana care for me, play with me, feed me, dress me, entertain me, teach me, and generally guide and mould the early years of my existence. And Floppy and the Freddies also do their part. I feel loved and safe. And so, 6 years pass, and then one day, Mum introduces me to Uncle Alf, the man who will become her second husband, and suddenly, in the summer of 1955, they are married. And Mum and I move away from Nana to Hendon, just a couple of miles away, but a world away from Nana for me. And now, a few months later, it is winter, and Nana is gone. And I don't know how to process this news. I feel helpless and inconsolable as I am put to bed and eventually cry myself into a troubled sleep. I don't know how much time passes. But I suddenly find myself awake and become aware of a warm and loving presence at the foot of my bed. As my eyes adjust, I see that it is Nana, standing there, smiling at me. Her love and kindness envelop me. I feel no fear or doubt, just a complete acceptance of what is happening and an overwhelming sense of comfort. And then she speaks, in her familiar, soft voice, using the affectionate name she always uses for me. It's all right, Michaela. It's all right. And in that moment, my feelings of upset and sadness instantly evaporate, to be replaced by complete calm. I feel this dreadful mantle of misery vanish as it lifts away from me, and I fall back into a deep, relaxed slumber, knowing that it is indeed all right. Part 2. Vernon. My all-time favourite toy is a model electric train set, which I am given when I am about 7, I think. In the box are sections of track which form an oval loop, a replica steam locomotive, and 3 passenger carriages, along with a shiny black plastic control box, which houses a 6-volt lantern battery. I am entranced by my train set. I carefully unpack all of the components, click together the track layout sections, and position the rolling stock wheels on the rails, ensuring that everything is properly coupled together. And finally, I attach the 2 wires from the black plastic control box to the track connector base. And now the moment of truth, the satisfying hum and soft clatter of rolling wheels as I engage the control switch and the train springs into motion. The shiny black plastic control box has only 3 settings: off, forward, and reverse. There's no speed control, so I spend hours making my train circle, then stop, then reverse, then go forward again, then, well, you get the picture. And sometimes I just let it run and run and run as I lie sprawled on the floor, gazing at this marvel that is under my sole control. At dinner or bedtime, I follow an equally painstaking process of disassembling and packing all of the elements back in their original box and carefully returning it to its storage place. I love that train set, and I treat it with reverence. Over time, the original toy train set grows to become a serious collection. I have the Triang Trains catalogue, you see, and there is never a question of what I want for my birthday or what I'm saving my pocket money for. I eventually have several locomotives, an abundance of track, a fleet of passenger and freight rolling stock, and a collection of accessories such as station buildings, bridges, a turntable, engine sheds, platforms, and a small army of scale model characters to populate them, from train drivers to guards to signalmen with flags to passengers with luggage. And the shiny black battery box, which was okay for a toy, is now replaced with a transformer unit worthy of a serious collection, which plugs into a wall socket, allowing me to control the speeds, accelerating along straight sections, slowing on curves as the elevation rises to cross a bridge, or braking to pull into a station. And the original storage box has been replaced by a large old battered brown suitcase that my mum has found for me to house my serious collection. When my mum remarries in 1955 and we move, the large old battered brown suitcase and its contents come with us and find a home in a spare bedroom of our new house, where I can spread out my collection and constantly find refuge in the whirring, humming and clacking for hours on end in my own little domain. It is the zenith of my love affair with the train set. When my mum's marriage breaks up in 1960, we move on again with my new little 4-year-old sister Shirley. The collection goes back in the old battered brown suitcase and comes with us, now to be stored in the closet of my new bedroom at our flat in North Finchley, where it will stay mostly undisturbed through my teenage years. It isn't forgotten, but just like the transportation era it represents, its heyday is over. When Madeline and I marry in 1968, the large, old, battered brown suitcase travels to our new home in New Southgate. But it is now consigned to a remote area in the attic. The end of the line, pun intended, comes in 1971, when Madeline and I and new daughter Kim are about to emigrate to Canada. We have limited packing space for our household goods for the transatlantic journey, and since North American voltages are different, everything electrical needs to be discarded or disposed of. In the final days of frantic scramble before the move, I never get around to finding it a new home. So the large old battered brown suitcase, no doubt by now covered in dust, its serious collection contents, and its 18 years of memories are quietly left in the attic. Perhaps the next house owner or their children will one day explore the attic and with delight discover and enjoy it as much as I have. Fast forward to around 1980. Madeline and I are sitting in front of a psychic by the name of Vernon Batson in Toronto. He is a young man who doesn't have a crystal ball or chant any incantations or use special lighting or employ any theatrics of any kind. He just looks at us intently, closes his eyes, and quietly intones what comes into his mind. His statements are intriguing, but we give no feedback as we don't want to influence or guide him in any conscious or unconscious way. Suddenly, he frowns and shakes his head and says, "Something has been left behind by someone." We have no idea what he is talking about. His frown deepens, and he looks puzzled, and then he says, "I see a train set. Does that mean anything to you?" It surely does, but Vernon isn't finished. "I see a ring. It is lost in tall grass, and it's still there, but it was replaced with another. Does that mean anything?" Yes, again. On our honeymoon in Mallorca in 1968, as we are walking through a grass field, Madeline is distraught to find that she has lost a ring that she has worn since childhood, a gift from her Uncle Barney that has great sentimental value. attempting to comfort her as we sit on the ground after a lengthy and fruitless search. I put my arm around her and stroke her wedding ring finger. Maybe it's symbolic, I say. One ring has been replaced by another. It seems to help. To use a baseball analogy, Vernon doesn't get a hit on every at-bat that day, but he definitely hits 2 towering home runs. Part 3. Jane. It's the late 80s, and I am at a downtown Toronto hotel, participating in a workshop designed to help us master simple meditative techniques to be more in control of our thoughts, our lives, and ultimately our happiness. There are about 30 people in this group today, and we are paired at different tables for an exercise. I am matched with an elderly lady named Jane. We will take turns doing this, and it will involve us each putting our mind in a meditative state using a technique that we have been taught earlier in the program. This state is called alpha, which refers to the frequency of the electrical energy of your brain waves when you're in a relaxed or meditative state. The class leader has briefed us on what we're expected to do and instructs us to begin. Step 1 is for Jane to go to her meditative alpha state with eyes gently closed, taking deep, steady breaths, and with the tips of her middle finger and thumb touching on each hand. After a while, I can see that her body and face have relaxed. Her breathing has slowed, and she seems calm and comfortable. I ask her if she has reached alpha, and she nods. Now I ask her to think about an important or significant event or situation in her life and relive the circumstances in her mind. A few moments later, I notice that her eyes are moving under her closed lids. Her body posture is shifting and her breathing is less steady. I can see that she is internally experiencing something as if in a dream, but I know she's not asleep because I occasionally ask if she's okay and give her encouragement, and she nods in response. After a few minutes at the class leader's direction, I close my eyes, slow my breathing, feel the tension drain from my body, and begin to drop into my own alpha state. One of the techniques I use is to imagine I'm in a slowly descending elevator, eventually arriving at a door which slides open to reveal a softly lit area which is warm, safe, and welcoming. I exit the elevator and announce to Jane that I have arrived. Now we're both at alpha state, and the next step is for Jane to imagine that she is wearing a helmet, then open her eyes and to quickly transfer that imaginary helmet with both hands onto my head. Speed is important, and I feel her fingers as the imaginary helmet drops onto my head, and I have to say, it fits perfectly. Keeping my eyes closed and remaining at alpha, my task is now to rapidly verbalize whatever comes into my mind without evaluating or editing, however strange or puzzling. And that's exactly what I do. Almost immediately, I see an elderly man dressed in loose, all-white tropical-style clothing in what appears to be a solitary hut in a deserted area of prairie, which I somehow know is in South America, but I don't know exactly where. As I observe from a distance, he emerges from the hut, and I notice that he has a stocky build and a pronounced limp, supporting himself with the aid of a walking stick. I'm getting closer and can see him clearly and describe his features. He is weather-beaten, tanned, and wrinkled. He knows I am watching, but expresses no surprise, and even waves the stick amiably at me. Without saying a word, he starts to walk back into the hut, then hesitates, as if a thought has occurred to him. He turns his head back toward me and smiles endearingly. But the soft fondness in that smile is clearly not meant for me. In that moment, I know that his limp is from an injury sustained at sea, and that he is asking me to pass on a message that he is all right and not to worry about him. The experience is vivid and intense, and I want to know more, but that is all I can see and hear, and the image fades. So I stop talking, and returning from my alpha state, open my eyes to find Jane in tears. It seems I have described the love of her life from many years earlier. He had been involved in a serious boating accident in the Caribbean, and they had subsequently separated. She had lost touch with him, although she believed he had gone to South America. My description of him and his mannerisms and expressions is exactly as she remembers him. She tells me that she has been haunted by the pain of their parting for many years and was reliving their love affair in her alpha state. And now she feels connected to him once again, greatly comforted by this experience, thanking me over and over again. I'm a little embarrassed, but it's wonderful to see her so happy, and it makes me happy to have helped, even if I don't really understand what I have done. Epilogue. Every story has 3 parts: a beginning, a middle, and an ending. These 3 stories all begin with passion for a person or thing, a grandmother, a train set, a ring, a lover. The middle is about loss and the unresolved emotional pain it can cause either through leaving or being left. And the ending is about finding a sense of comfort that acts as a soothing balm on that feeling of loss. Sometimes within hours, as with Nana, other times after decades, as with Jane. And as for these sometimes mysterious mechanisms that allow these life dramas to unfold in this way, I've long learned to accept them even if I don't yet fully understand their inner workings. If we look to the skies with the assistance of telescopes, we can clearly see light from galaxies that flamed out of existence billions of years ago. So it seems to me completely credible that there are corresponding ways to detect the light of the enduring moments of our own lives or of those around us. What do you think? And now for the story behind the story. Depending on which document you trust, Nana was born in either 1876 or 1879 in Vilna, now known as Vilnius, in what was then part of Russia but is now Lithuania. So she was either 77 or 80 at the time of her death. She was one of 7 of 12 siblings that survived past childhood. Attempting to enter the United States as a young woman, she was turned back at Ellis Island, New York, because of eye disease, and eventually landed in England in 1903, where she was married and widowed twice, giving birth to 4 boys between 1905 and 1917, and finally my mother in 1920. I didn't tell my mum about my visit from Nana until many years later. Maybe I thought it would be too painful for her, or perhaps it just seemed too personal and private. When I finally did mention it, she told me that one of my uncles had been visiting the empty house shortly after Nana's death, and she had appeared to him too. Shortly after our first psychic reading with Vernon, my mum came over from England, and Madeline and I took her to visit him too. She was reluctant at first, but curious, and saw him privately. When she came out of the meeting, she was visibly shaken and refused to discuss the conversation. She never revealed what had happened. The workshop I attended with Jane was for the Silva method, spelled S-I-L-V-A. It was created by Jose Silva, an American electronics engineer and self-taught student of the mind who originally developed his techniques to help his children do better at school. His books and programs are still widely available today and are based on established and proven neuroscience. I don't actually remember the name of the elderly lady I was paired with, so I called her Jane for the purpose of this narrative. After my session with her, we reversed the roles. But alas, my relived experience was obviously less dramatic than hers, as I don't remember any of that either. Until next time, this is The Right Toast.